Hello and welcome to Hamer Reviews. Today I've got something a little bit special for you and a little bit different. In front of me I have an absolute classic of a camera, the Nikon F6. This is the last truly professional film camera that Nikon produced. But even at the time that this was released, the writing was already on the wall. In fact, we'd already gone past the writing on the wall and really film had been phased out for many professionals. We'd already had the fairly successful D1 series and the also fairly successful D2 series be released. So we had the D2H and indeed, by the time this was released, the D2X. So why did Nikon go ahead with producing this camera? I think that there were still professionals holding on to film. At the end of the day, even the D2X didn't have that much in terms of resolution and film was actually still better. That being said, this is an 8 frame per second camera, in many ways a sports camera. However, really I think that the only people really using these, and I might be wrong, don't get me wrong, I was pretty young in 2004, but I'm pretty sure the only people using these were hobbyist enthusiasts and those shooting studio portraiture and that kind of thing. Because if you were shooting sports, why would you be using a film camera? I now expect lots of you in the comments to be telling me that you were, but that was my interpretation of it anyhow. The F6 itself is really interesting. The F5, which I also am going to have a short video on, was already quite a large camera. It sort of stepped away from the F4, you had the vertical grip built in, but the F6 moved away from it again more towards the F4, and you had this beautiful body which could do pretty much everything you could want a film camera to do. Now, I'm not going to demonstrate the camera in use without the grip because I don't have the required CR123A batteries, which this needs if you're going to use it without the grip. A bit of a mistake on my part. I should have bought some to use it, but honestly, I thought it used AAs, as did everyone at the time. In fact, I remember that being one of the gripes that I read about, being that this was one of the first F cameras that didn't readily and easily take F5s without a grip. And so here we are. I have fallen into the trap myself. However, as you can see here, I've paired this with one of the best 85mm lenses Nikon ever made, the 85mm 1.4 AFS-G edition, and this is just a superb combo, and I can imagine that there have been many great photos taken with this combination and indeed with the AFD version of this lens. It is very chunky, it's got a nice grip to it, but it feels very comfortable in the hands. On the back, what might surprise you is we have an LCD. The LCD allows you to change the custom settings menus, lets you see which focus point you're using, etc. This is a very interesting camera because it is a hybrid, essentially, between Nikon's D-series digital cameras and their F-series film cameras. Now, why do I say that? The film and transport mechanism from this camera is from the F5. Now, that's a pretty great system. It was tweaked and upgraded in many different ways, but for all intents and purposes, this had a lot of the tech from the F5 in it. But the focus system, a lot of the body, this came from the D2 series. This means you're getting an 11-point focus system with, I think it's about 9 cross types. That's already pretty impressive, right? You're talking a focus system that can keep up with the digital cameras of the day. Cam 2000 motor in it, so basically that meant you got really fast autofocus with a lot of lenses that otherwise would be quite slow. So if you're using some AFD lenses, for instance, the 85mm 1.4 AFD that I already mentioned, you're going to get nice and fast focus. Obviously with AFS lenses, don't need to talk about that. They were nice, quick and snappy as you're used to them today. The wonderful thing about this camera when you're shooting with it, and I have used it in the past, is not only the way it feels, but the way it operates. This operates just like the D2 series did. So you've got the mode switch on to the top to quickly switch between program, aperture priority, shutter priority, manual mode, etc. You've got your standard exposure compensation buttons. You've got your illumination button for the screen. On the back, as you'd be used to from the Pro Series cameras, you can switch between single photo and continuous high. You also, and I think this was a first, if I remember correctly, have a function button on this camera as well. Now this is, I think it's the only film camera, definitely of the sort of Pro F series, that had a function button that you could customize. I've heard a lot of it being used for the sort of pre-flash modes, but it was cool to have that so easily available. You have your bracketing button. Everything about this is set out to be fast and easy to use. Having the 1005 dot system for the autofocus module was really cool as well. You know, you had great subject tracking with this camera. You had all the different autofocus modes you would have been used to from the D2 series. There were some things that bugged people about the camera. You couldn't change the prism, so you can't, you know, change all the fancy sort of add different screens and different modes and so on. But I think that was one of those compromises that you were going to get for that slightly smaller body shape, and because it's not something we've got with any of the D series cameras. Because you need to remember, this is essentially a D series camera with a film mechanism inside it. I love the vertical grip as well. So this is the MB40, and this vertical grip is really different. And if I think about the film vertical grips that I've used, I haven't really seen any with this design, and I'm actually not sure why not. If I just demonstrate, you actually have the focus point selector that sticks out from the grip, so it actually provides an extra point on the camera to hold the grip in place, but also means it's in a much more comfortable position. Having that obviously allows you to not only use the shutter button on the grip, but also nice and easily change the focus point if you want to as well. I think it's a really good design, and actually I think it's something that Nikon could carry across if they wanted to onto some of the D series cameras even today, so very many years later. Obviously, this being a film camera, I'm not going to talk to you about resolution. I'm not going to talk to you about sharpness. Needless to say, in terms of sharpness, the autofocus system is absolutely capable of providing pinpoint images, but the actual quality of the film is going to be a big difference as well. Obviously, if you're shooting something like Velvia 50, you're going to get beautiful colors, beautiful sharpness as well, with that wonderful film, which I used to shoot with a lot. But then you could also choose obviously high ISO films, and you know, obviously I don't think they really compare in the modern day in terms of resolution, but equally you could still get some really great photographs of a camera like this. The film rewind mechanism is obviously quick and automated as you'd expect, and if you were to pick up this camera, you'd probably be forgiven for thinking it was a D series camera just because of that massive LCD on the back. I think it's an interesting thing to take a look at, because you can really see some of the design choices that Nikon was already making back in 2004 in today's cameras. In fact, I know this is reminiscent of the D2 series, but it even reminds me of the D3 in many ways in terms of how it feels with regards to the vertical grip and top grip integration. And you can definitely draw a lot of parallels between them. The F6 is now discontinued, which it's understandable, but it is still a shame. Ironically, I did want to pick up my own one about a year before the discontinuation happened, and then the prices all shot up. So I'm going to stay well away from that now. But one of the things which I did just want to do, and this is perhaps just a little point of interest to myself, but I do love the way this shutter sounds. I do feel that with the D series cameras, they did sound good, but I do feel that sort of this style shutter just has something about it. It is very similar to the F5, as I mentioned, but it's just wonderful. And being able to get 8 frames per second out of a film camera with that wonderful autofocus system means that even today, if you wanted to shoot a couple of rolls of film, there are a lot worse cameras that you could use. So in terms of that shutter sound, we'll just give you a quick demonstration. And that's probably pretty much most of the way through a roll of film, if there was one in here, which there isn't, thankfully. But yeah, this is an incredible camera. You obviously compare it with any of Nikon's lenses, which is great. Even pre-AI lenses, you could have your F6 modified to accept them. So you have all those wonderful controls. You've got your sync ports and your 10-pin adapter port on here as well. So all those accessories as well that you could have got for the D2 series will work with this as well, including the great, you know, physical shutter releases, which I do quite miss, that was always quite a wonderful thing with my D1 series that I was shooting with at the time. Being able to use this port and use really nice manual external shutters shutter buttons was always quite cool. You obviously have that. You've got the easy ways to change the metering systems. You've got quick ways to change the autofocus system. This is such a wonderful camera to use. It's almost a shame that it doesn't have that digital sensor in it. But I guess that's why you would have picked up a D2H or D2X or indeed D2XS, etc. So this is just my little short video on the F6. Just a really fascinating camera to take a look at. Really quite fun to shoot with, and if you can pick one up for a good price, I would absolutely recommend you do, even to keep as a piece of nostalgia, because I think it's highly unlikely that we're going to ever see another film camera surpass it from Nikon. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little look at a bit of a classic. If you have any questions about the F6, pop them in the comment section. I'll see if I can answer them if they haven't already been answered on the internet before. After all, this camera has got on a bit. Equally, if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, you know, especially if you want to see more content like this in the future. If you didn't, the other button works just fine. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It really helps, and I really, really do appreciate it. Thank you very much for watching, and I do hope I see you again next time. Goodbye.